This message is to all the white people who have BLM in their bio. If you really want to prove to black people that you love us and you care about us and you are down for the cause, do not go see that movie opening weekend.
I think I can smell shit.
You buy your ticket, you give it to a black person or a black family who can't afford to go. And then you go sit at that theater in front of the doors. You make sure that every black person in that theater can enjoy that movie in peace.
Social justice activist says white people must skip Black Panther Wakanda Forever on opening weekend. To do anything other than this is anti-black.
Now, if a white person were to say this, if this was reversed, a white person was telling black people to buy me food at a restaurant and then go stand outside while I eat with my family in peace, make sure no one disturbs me, that person would be fired from their job, canceled, deplatformed, etc. But you don't see that same energy for these radical black supremacists.
How is it anti-black if they go see it on the opening weekend? Because as a black person, you want a black movie to do as well as possible. And opening weekends, you want to be as big as possible.
Yes, I can definitely smell shit.
You know, I notice these people online who have such a huge lack of self-awareness of their own prejudices. I just want to look at them in the face and say, "Stuff you, little Miss Racist, I'm going to see the movie anyway." Black Pant. According to how my friend put it.
You can come to Wakanda, dead or alive. Sorry. You can come to Wakanda, sober or drunk. You can come to Wakanda, stoned or not. Sorry. Sorry.
So I've watched Wakanda Forever earlier today, Saturday, mainly because there's some extreme woke weirdo out there who says only black people can go see this movie. Like, how is this any different from like the Rosa Parks incident? Like, I might as well compete against the racism cause by seeing the film like any sane, commonsensical person. Because I'm a politically incorrect jerk. Though, in all seriousness, I can't say I can get entirely mad at the filmmakers for the decisions that they made regarding this movie. After all, the director of this movie and the other filmmakers have been dealt with a very tricky hand to play with. Their main lead star, Chadwick Boseman, tragically passed away after struggling with cancer. And especially since Chadwick Boseman didn't tell anyone that he had cancer, and his death just came very suddenly, and it was just quite a shock, honestly. So there was an entire script for Chadwick Boseman to work off with Black Panther 2, but by the time he was prepared, Chadwick Boseman passed on. So I can understand that, given that scenario, it can't be easy to follow up on such a highly anticipated film, especially when your main star passes away. So, whilst my mind is on the topic, I might as well give a quick review on the first Black Panther movie, since a lot of people love it so much. The first Black Panther movie, it's a good film. It's overrated, highly praised. Honestly, it's not that great. There's some over-bloated CGI stuff where the CGI is obvious, especially in the final fight between T'Challa and Killmonger. And T'Challa himself, as brilliantly as he is portrayed by Chadwick Boseman, he had more of an actual character arc in Captain America Civil War, which is why so many people say that the character of T'Challa, aka Black Panther, was better in Captain America Civil War than he was in the Black Panther movie. Not that he was terrible by any means, it's just that he didn't have much of a growth in his own Black Panther movie as he did in Captain America Civil War. However, there is a lot more to love and appreciate about the first Black Panther movie. The world building of a futuristic African city was really cool to see. The villain was really intriguing. Killmonger is one of the best MCU villains. Michael Jordan was his name. He brilliantly portrays this villain with such a passion and an oomph to it. And the other side characters were quite likable. I've heard other critiques saying the side characters were annoying, but I like the side characters. The first Black Panther movie is not the best MCU movie like so many people have been praising it to be, but I'd still say it's a pretty good MCU movie. I would give the first Black Panther movie... I think I'll give Black Panther in the MCU an 8 out of 12. So keep that in mind. As for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I've been hearing a whole wide range of different opinions regarding this movie, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I mean a whole variety of different opinions. There's some people who say they absolutely loved it and it was emotional. Other people, particularly those who have been having Marvel fatigue and are getting fed up with the woke propaganda, saying that this film was utter rubbish, just trash, and you should not go see this. I've heard some other people say that it's fine and mediocre, so I couldn't really give a final verdict until I saw the film itself. Although, I'm not gonna lie, going into this film, there were so many red flags in regards to the promotion of this movie. Like I said earlier, there was some woke activist on TikTok who was actively trying to say only black people are allowed to see the sacred golden idol during the opening weekend, which is just ironically racist, and they have such a lack of self-awareness, so that didn't exactly help the film's reputation. The trailer wasn't really awful or anything, but I kept hearing some other rumors and news which were also raising more red flags, such as the controversy behind the cultural representation of the character of Namor, and how his name was actually not what some people think it is, and that it was just something a bit more simple according to Stan Lee and the creators, and that there's some other misinterpretations of Mexican and Aztec and Incan culture and whatnot. And given the reputation of Phase 4 of the MCU, I think there's a wide consensus, despite what the critics say, that Phase 4 is the worst phase in the MCU. See, apart from this masterpiece Spider-Man Far From Home, and a few sparks of creativity here and there is a wide consensus amongst MCU fans that Phase 4 has dipped in quality compared to the previous few phases. I remember making a video about my fears about Marvel fatigue. I was expecting Marvel to just keep making movies that were probably like mediocre, but still keeping good spirit with what was formed, but people would get tired and just want a new story. Phase 4 is even worse than I could have possibly imagined, because they're throwing away logical inconsistencies with the lore just so they could pander to the fans in specific ways that just come across as cheap and pandering. And they keep using all this woke propaganda which demasculates these men, some of these previous heroes who were seen as like smart and strong and vigilant. Like, it used to be like the men and women are equals in the previous 3 phases, but now it's more obvious that they're trying to degrade the men to try to elevate the women to almost unrealistic heights. So to make a long story short, yeah, there were a lot of red flags, especially when I went to see Thor 4. That movie got me so angry.
Let's see who you are. And flick. Oh.
Shall we help? Eventually.
Shut the up. Know your place, trash.
Fortunately, as I went to see Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I could safely say I did not cringe really hard or get really angry in the same way I did when watching Thor Love and Thunder. As I was watching Wakanda Forever, it wasn't like when I was watching Thor Love and Thunder where nearly every minute of the film I was thinking, oh, just let it end, let it, just stop. With Wakanda Forever, I was just sitting there, just fairly content with what I was seeing and just viewing the film as it was, just thinking, okay, that doesn't make much sense. And watching the film, it's passable, but when I hear other people's opinion and I take time to think about the film, there's still a lot of logical inconsistencies with this film, and people are hyper praising this movie, which was another red flag, that people kept using the word emotional. But having seen the film, I can't exactly get too angry at this kind of feedback, because there is this emotional send-off to Chadwick Boseman. The film, I will say this, does almost somewhat begin and somewhat end on some really high notes with paying homage to Chadwick Boseman. If there was one major flaw with the way they paid homage to Chadwick Boseman, was the fact that he died off screen in a very questionable manner. I've heard other people say they would have preferred if T'Challa was recast or he had one last heroic last stand in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then he would die off screen, and then the characters would mourn the death. I've been hearing people online just say that kind of thing, saying that there could have been many ways to approach this. So the way they went about with killing off T'Challa is very questionable, and they just kill off T'Challa with
unspecified virus of unknown origins.
I kid you not, which I just think that's fairly odd. Isn't that a bit pandering to like modern times? Like, I think I would have accepted like being fatally wounded in battle in the same way that T'Challa managed to finish off Killmonger in the previous film or something like that. But anyway, there's a funeral and there's some brilliant acting. That's something I won't deny about this film. All the actors and actresses are giving it their all, and unlike Thor: Love and Thunder, the actors are actually taking their scenarios quite seriously, and for the most part, they're not making any jokes to the detriment of somebody else's struggles. That was something I really hated about Thor: Love and Thunder, but thankfully it's almost nowhere to be seen in this particular film. The film is, for the most part, taken quite seriously, and these actors and actresses are really good at conveying their emotions. There were several scenes throughout this film where I could really sense that the grief of losing T'Challa and the pressures of trying to protect Wakanda become much for these characters, even though they're still giving it their all. The scenes of them like tearing up or getting angry, or I think they worked pretty well. Like, there's even an end scene. It was a really, honestly, I could complain a lot about this film, but the end scene was just wonderful. It was a wonderful scene. Shuri, played by the brilliant Letitia Wright, she manages to burn away her funeral clothes, as her mother told her to early in the film, and she's just thinking back to T'Challa and just what a wonderful person he was, and it's a nice quiet moment, and the film ends off there, and there's another credit scene where Shuri gets introduced to T'Challa's son. That was a nice scene too, although there is some other implications about that boy not gonna grow up with a father, away from the potential duty of becoming a king, which can be problematic. But at the time, it was quite a heartfelt scene. What other strengths can I mention about this film? Many times it looked visually appealing. What else can I say about the film? It was interesting to see the variety of cultures and just the how imaginative it can be. It's somewhat immersive in some ways, but it can get a bit tedious at times because this film is not the longest Marvel film, but it almost feels like it's the longest Marvel film. Like, I've heard complaints, and I would agree with them. Like, there are scenes of dialogue where conversations that could have lasted for about 2 minutes drag on for like 10, if not for like 10 minutes. And it can seem a bit much at times. They're doing a Jupiter ascending on us. Another problem I had with this film is the way they handled particular side characters. I know, I'm not just talking about the complaint I've been hearing that they shouldn't have the side characters be the main characters. I'm talking about the fact that within the context of this film, there's certain side characters that are introduced, whether they be familiar face from the previous film or a particular new face, who almost don't really contribute to anything other than, hey, they exist. Like, Martin Freeman's American character. I can understand there are consequences to Martin Freeman being a visitor to Wakanda in the past. And no, I'm not going to use the C word as part of the political propaganda. But apart from maybe like saying hello here and there, maybe telling some characters about certain news, Martin Freeman's character almost contributes nothing to the film overall. Like, you could cut Martin Freeman's scenes out of the film entirely and it wouldn't change. There was almost no point in him being there other than, hi, he exists. Go watch The Hobbit. And then there's Ironheart, the supposed new Tony Stark. I was hearing another red flag regarding this particular character, because there are a lot of people I heard complain that Ironheart is basically Iron Man, but more of a narcissist. I've heard people say her backstory is she wants to be better than Tony Stark. That sounds like a villain's upbringing.
I am your biggest fan.
Although, to be fair, in the context of this film, she is a college student, so it would make sense if she was aspiring to be someone like Tony Stark. I mean, that would make sense. So the reason why Ironheart is in this film is to promote the Disney Plus is to establish this plot point where there's this machine that apparently only she made as part of a college project, which can track down vibranium, the main metal source, if you can even call it metal, that Wakanda uses for much of their armor and weaponry. However, Ironheart seems to have gotten a lot more than she bargained for, as now this vibranium tracking machine has gotten her into a lot of trouble, hence why Shuri and the captain of the guard are going to see her and bring her to Wakanda. I've got a lot of questions in regards to this. A vibranium-seeking machine, like, are you sure there aren't, like, any other genius people out there who would have done the same thing? Like, there could have been some other men and women who would have made attempts to, like, make a vibranium machine. Like, I mean, if Ironheart is a prodigy who made a very efficient machine to find vibranium, fine, but with Wakanda being exposed, wouldn't you want and especially with Wakanda's mistrust of other countries, wouldn't you expect like more countries to find machinery to seek vibranium, especially when we already have an established scene of a team finding vibranium only to be attacked by the army of some people, the sea people led by Namor, and them killing all the people on board the ship probably wouldn't change anything. All the people would have to do is locate where the ship was and then continue finding a vibranium. Going back to Ironheart, apart from that plot point regarding finding the vibranium, Ironheart doesn't really do much other than exist to promote her new show, because if there's anything Phase 4 is trying to do, it's just more stuff. We need to get you more excited for the next stuff to promote the next stuff. We gotta keep churning out more content. And honestly, first impressions of Ironheart, I don't really find her that compelling as a character, especially when there's a scene where she has to fly up to interfere with a satellite drone, and they're copying a flight scene from the first Iron Man movie. I can understand that she's running out of oxygen and she managed to save herself at the last minute, but why didn't her suit face the infamous ice problem? Did anyone else not notice that? She should have had an ice problem. That's what Tony Stark found out with his second phase of his suit from the first Iron Man movie. It froze up, so he had to make better material just so it could withstand being in the air and being in outer space. But here's Ironheart with
a box of scraps!
And yet she doesn't freeze up. And look, she's many, many feet in the air. Like, not only should her suit freeze up, but as someone else pointed out, like, her whole body should be an icicle. And this is followed up by another logical inconsistency, in that she causes a blast which destroys police property. She probably killed several policemen, and then it's treated off as a, ha, look, go us. Wait, you just killed some police people who were just trying to do their jobs. I guess it's fine if a woman does it. That's the message of Phase 4. And then they meet the villains. Yes, let's talk about the villains. Let's get the elephant out of the room. No, Namor is not as compelling as Killmonger. He's nowhere near as compelling as Killmonger. Yes, Namor is portrayed as sympathetic, or at least is supposed to be, but I don't really get a sense of intimidation with Namor. And his motivation to try to take over the world, whilst it can be sympathetic, it logically doesn't really make much sense. He's trying to kill this one person so that vibranium won't be found, and so that his people won't be found, and then he decides he wants to kill the entire world anyway, exposing his own people.
Not a great plan.
And despite some gadgets and super strength, this guy is supposedly meant to be stronger than Thor and the Hulk, if I'm remembering this correctly. This guy, like, no offense to the guy portraying him, but this guy is meant to be stronger than Thor and the Hulk? With the flappy feet and the not very intimidating build of his? And speaking of characters who don't look like they have the right build for combat, I guess this is major spoiler territory now. Shuri manages to obtain the powers of the Black Panther. Yeah, big Marvel set piece. You almost know the drill for the most part by now. But as I was hearing someone commentate on this film, as I was hearing someone critique this film, something came to me. And this led to making me realize another logical inconsistency, especially compared with the last film this time. And it's mainly got to do with the regards that Shuri got severely stabbed by a spear through like, this part of her body all the way through her back, severely wounding her. And yet she somehow survives, even managing to do a full, like, forward flip in front of the main villain and still keep intact. And I remembered a certain scene from the previous film and I thought, hang on, wait a minute! So get this, in the previous film, T'Challa and Killmonger both had the power of the Black Panther and both had the Black Panther armor. Albeit it was a version of the Black Panther that used light technology that could fizzle out if other similar light technology was nearby, like the trains. But regardless, T'Challa kills Killmonger by stabbing him in the chest with a spearhead or some kind of sharp dagger or something. And Killmonger dies of this spear wound in the chest. And yet, Shuri, who has, and no offense to Letitia Wright, but Shuri, who has less of a physical build than Killmonger, she didn't just get stabbed right here in the chest or so, as Killmonger did. No, she had an entire spear ripped right through her body. And yet, she survives. Both Killmonger and Shuri both had the Black Panther armor, they both had the Black Panther superpowers, and they both got stabbed in the front by some kind of spear weapon. Killmonger is physically stronger and more physically imposing than the character of Shuri, and he dies because of his spear wound in the first Black Panther movie. He passes on that way. And we have proof that he is dead because he is in the ancestral plane and Shuri meets Killmonger in the ancestral plane. But when Shuri gets stabbed in a similar manner as Killmonger did with the Black Panther armor and powers, and not only stabbed at the front, but stabbed all the way right through her back, she survives that! What? And I'm not going to say that this film is a terrible film, because I've heard people say, this is the worst film of the MCU Phase 4. I would say that. Thor 4 is significantly worse. Because with Thor 4, there were some logical inconsistencies that destroyed the main character and destroyed all the logic and the whole point of the previous three phases. But with this film, the logical inconsistencies aren't as lore-shattering as they were with Thor 4, but the logical inconsistencies are still pretty distracting. So, this film can be rather heartfelt, but I think people are letting their emotions dictate their final verdict of the film, hence all these 10 out of 10 type reviews. I mean, 10 out of 10? Really? Really? Look, I know it's meant to be an homage to Chadwick Boseman. Yes, there are some heartfelt scenes. Yes, it can be visually impressive. Yes, there's some great acting, but come on, a 10 out of 10? Really? Really? You think Wakanda Forever is greater and more heart-wrenching than Avengers Infinity War? I cried during Infinity War. Many more cried during Endgame. That was the box office hit. And you think this potential box office... You think Wakanda Forever, this potential box office flop amongst other series of box office flops in Phase 4? You really think that's the 10 out of 10 film? Really? Really? Especially when the first Black Panther movie did so much better in regards to the villain's motivation, the world building. You really think Wakanda Forever is the superior film? Tell you what. Perhaps we should let you have your emotionally driven gratitude towards Wakanda Forever. And we'll just wait until this emotional heat wave just kind of calms down. I guarantee you, The moment you let your emotions pass by you, you're going to start looking at Wakanda Forever through a more critically thinking mind. And then you're going to think, this film meant well, but it wasn't quite the masterpiece people were hyping it up to be. I was going to give this film a 6 out of 12, but thinking about these logical inconsistencies, I think I'll give Wakanda Forever a 5.5 out of 12. I think another fictional African character, Doomfist, said it best. You're not bad, but not good either. So, good acting, good spectacle, great villain. I wouldn't say it's the best MCU villain, but... I wouldn't say it's the best MCU film. Michael Jordan is... Killmonger is... Cut this out! Anyway,